This is a courtroom, not your command post. Without me, this building doesn't even stay safe. Are you threatening this court, Chief? Threatening no, Judge. I'm reminding you who runs this city.
Imagine stepping into a courtroom expecting another routine morning. Traffic fines, small disputes, the usual hum of local justice. Instead, you're met with something so unsettling that even the walls seem to tighten. A man in full police uniform, medals shining like warning lights, marches into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom not as its protector, but as its defendant. His boots echo across the floor with the confidence of someone who believes the entire system bends for him. The gallery watches, breath caught in their throats because they've never seen anything like this. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepares them for what comes next. As the police chief stands before the bench, defiance radiating off him like heat from a furnace, he leans forward and spits out the words that will freeze every heartbeat in the room. "I own you, pig." For a moment, time seems to stop. The clerk's fingers hover above the keys. The bailiff stiffens. Even Judge Caprio, a man who has heard every insult, every excuse, every desperate plea imaginable, blinks once, slowly, as if making sure the words actually left the chief's mouth. It's not just disrespect. It's a declaration of war, made by a man drunk on authority and convinced that his badge is a crown no one can knock from his head. But in this courtroom the truth has teeth. And today it is hungry. Before we dive deeper into the moment that stunned Providence and the nation, take a second to support the channel that brings these real moments of courage and justice to light. Hit subscribe and drop a comment below telling us what you think. This is Real Judge Stories, and what you're about to witness is the kind of reckoning that only happens when power finally meets its match. Stay tuned, the truth unfolds now here. If you're watching this, you already understand something most people overlook. Justice isn't just laws and procedures. It's courage. It's integrity. It's standing firm when someone with power, rank, or influence thinks they can bend the rules to suit themselves. And if you believe, truly believe, that no badge, no title, and no amount of authority should ever place anyone above accountability, then you're in the right place. Because stories like this remind us why truth matters, why courage in the courtroom matters, and why judges like Frank Caprio still earn the respect of ordinary people every single day. So settle in, stay sharp, and if you haven't already, subscribe to Real Judge Stories. Let's uncover what really happened. It's just past 9:15 a.m. inside the Providence Municipal Court, the kind of morning where everything feels ordinary on the surface. Papers shuffling, quiet conversations, the low hum of fluorescent lights. People wait in neat rows, clutching traffic tickets and minor citations, expecting a quick hearing before heading back to their day. But there's something different in the air today, a faint tension running beneath the surface like a current under calm water. The bailiff stands a little straighter than usual, glancing toward the entrance every few seconds. Even the clerks seem unusually alert, their eyes flicking between the door and Judge Caprio's bench. Light pours through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor, shadows that make the courtroom feel more like a stage waiting for actors who haven't yet appeared. Judge Frank Caprio sits quietly at the bench, reviewing files, his glasses perched low on his nose. There's a calmness around him, the steady presence of someone who's spent decades navigating storms without flinching. But even he feels it, the shift in the atmosphere, the sense that something larger, heavier, is about to collide with the normal rhythm of the day. Then the door opens. The sound isn't loud, but it snaps every head toward the entrance. Conversations fade. Phone screens lower. The entire room seems to contract as heavy footsteps echo through the doorway, measured, deliberate footsteps belonging to someone who carries power the way others carry fear. The man entering isn't here for routine justice. He's about to redefine the morning for everyone present. He steps into the courtroom like he owns the oxygen in the room. Chief Robert Maddox, the man responsible for commanding more than 300 officers across Providence, walks forward in full dress uniform, a uniform so crisp it looks untouched by human hands. Rows of medals glint across his chest, catching the courtroom lights like a warning signal. His badge shines brighter than anything else, polished to a mirror finish, reflecting the world the way he wants it to look, under his control. Maddox doesn't walk. He occupies space. His shoulders sit back with military precision, chin tilted just high enough to suggest dominance without uttering a word. A man who has spent 28 years giving orders rather than receiving them. A man who believes authority isn't assigned, it's inherited, owned, enforced. But it's not just confidence he wears. It's entitlement. A thick, suffocating entitlement that seems to darken the air around him. Unlike every other person in the courtroom, Maddox doesn't remove his hat. He keeps it on intentionally, the brim casting a faint shadow across his eyes, a small but deliberate act of disrespect. It's the kind of gesture that says, remember who protects this building, who commands the officers standing outside, who keeps this city's pulse steady. His attorney, Daniel Mercer, walks just half a step behind him, a man who knows the price of defending someone with power this concentrated. But even Mercer can't mask the unease tightening around his features. Because today, Chief Robert Maddox isn't here as Providence's symbol of authority. He's here as its problem. Judge Frank Caprio looks up the moment Chief Robert Maddox reaches the defendant's table. There's no visible reaction, no raised brow, no shift in posture, but something subtle changes in the air around him. Caprio has spent more than 3 decades on this bench, long enough to recognize the difference between confidence and arrogance, authority and dominance. And whatever Maddox carries into this room, it isn't respect. Caprio removes his glasses with slow precision, placing them gently beside the stack of case files. It's a small gesture, but in this courtroom it carries meaning. He's giving this moment his full, unobstructed attention. While Maddox stands rigid and gleaming in polished brass, Caprio remains steady, grounded, a calm center in a room that feels like it's tilting. Where Maddox radiates force, Caprio radiates control. Where the chief moves to intimidate, the judge stands to understand. They are opposites forged for collision. Caprio's voice, when he finally speaks, is measured, quiet enough to demand listening, firm enough to remind everyone who holds the gavel. Chief Maddox, he says, this is a courtroom, not a command post. Please remove your cover. Maddox's jaw tightens. Caprio doesn't blink. 2 men. 2 powers. 1 room. The collision is only beginning. Judge Caprio opens the folder before him, the soft rustle of paper somehow louder than the murmurs that filled the room moments ago. The gallery leans in without even realizing it. Something about the judge's stillness draws every eye, every breath, every ounce of attention. Caprio clears his throat lightly and begins. Chief Robert Maddox, he says, voice steady but carrying undeniable weight, you are charged with abuse of authority, intimidation of a public official and interference with an active city investigation. A faint ripple moves through the courtroom, whispers shifting like wind across a field. Maddox stands motionless, but his eyes narrow just slightly, the only crack in his carefully controlled demeanor. Caprio continues, these charges stem from an incident on the evening of March 2nd. According to the sworn complaint, you confronted Councilwoman Elena Morales in a secured city parking facility and engaged in behavior intended to threaten her safety and influence her official duties. The words drop like stones into water, heavy, undeniable, sending ripples of tension outward. Maddox's attorney, Daniel Mercer, straightens his tie, already preparing to inject calm into a situation steadily tightening. Caprio looks up from the documents. Chief Maddox, do you understand the charges brought against you? Silence sweeps the room. The real storm is still gathering. Chief Robert Maddox doesn't hesitate. He doesn't blink. He simply shifts his weight, lifts his chin, and lets a thin, dismissive smile curve across his mouth, like the charges read aloud were nothing more than clerical errors interrupting his morning. Yes, Your Honor, he says, his tone clipped and overly controlled. I understand what was read. What I don't understand is why a professional misunderstanding is suddenly being treated like a criminal offense. A murmur rolls through the courtroom. Maddox continues before his attorney can touch his arm. Councilwoman Morales misinterpreted a conversation. He adds, voice sharpening. That's all this is. A discussion between city officials. Nothing more. Caprio's eyes lock onto him, unwavering. That's not what I asked, Chief, Caprio replies. Do you understand the charges? Maddox exhales through his nose, annoyed. I understand the words, Your Honor, he corrects, stressing them with the arrogance of a man unused to being questioned. I simply don't agree with the dramatization of events. Daniel Mercer winces. Because everyone can hear it. Maddox isn't defending himself. He's daring the courtroom to challenge him. Judge Caprio nods toward the prosecutor's table, and Assistant District Attorney Lauren Kim stands, a tablet in her hand. Your Honor, the complainant is available via video conference, she says. Given the nature of the protective order request, she preferred remote testimony. Caprio nods once. Bring her in. A large monitor flickers to life, revealing Councilwoman Elena Morales sitting in what appears to be a softly lit office. She's composed, but her eyes carry the weight of sleepless nights. Her hands are folded tightly in her lap, knuckles pale. Councilwoman, Caprio begins gently, Please tell us in your own words what happened on March 2nd. Elena breathes in, then exhales slowly, steadying herself. Your Honor. I had just left a late budget committee meeting. It was close to 8. The parking structure was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered on the 3rd level. I wasn't expecting anyone to still be there. She pauses, swallowing. As I approached my car, I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy ones. Purposeful. I turned and saw Chief Maddox walking toward me. He wasn't in uniform that night, just a dark coat, but the way he looked at me, like I owed him an explanation for being there, made my stomach drop. Her voice trembles, but she continues. I greeted him politely. He didn't respond. Instead, he stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell the cologne on his jacket. He said, "Interesting presentation tonight." I thanked him. Then he said, "Interesting, but dangerous." The courtroom stiffens. Elena grips her hands tighter. I told him the oversight proposal wasn't meant to attack the department. It was simply accountability. She hesitates. That's when everything changed. Her voice lowers. He stepped between me and my car door. He said, "You don't understand how this city survives." Then he leaned in and said, "I know where you live, Elena." Gasps ripple through the gallery. Elena nods slowly, painfully. He told me he knew my son's school, my street, my schedule. He said, "Every officer in this city answers to me. Think carefully about your next move." A tear slips down her cheek, but her voice stays firm. I was terrified. I left my car. I called for a ride. And that night, I realized, if this is how he treats an elected official, what chance does the average citizen have? The courtroom is silent. Caprio lets the silence settle like dust. Because everyone has just felt her fear. Councilwoman Elena Morales takes a shaky breath, the kind that comes from replaying the same terrifying moment far too many times. The monitor's glow softens her face, but it can't hide the strain around her eyes. Your Honor, she continues quietly, the fear didn't end in that parking garage. It followed me home. It followed me into my son's bedroom when I checked the locks twice. It followed me every time headlights slowed near my street. The courtroom hangs on to every word. I didn't tell my son what happened, she says. He's only 9. But he noticed. He asked why I kept the curtains closed. Why I jumped when the doorbell rang. She wipes her cheek almost apologetically. I told him I was just tired. But the truth is I didn't sleep for 2 nights. I kept replaying Chief Maddox's words, his tone, his face, the certainty behind everything he said. Her fingers tremble. I reached out to 2 colleagues the next morning. Both admitted they'd heard rumors, that Maddox had a habit of reminding people who ran the city. But everyone was too afraid to say anything publicly. A murmur ripples through the gallery. Elena presses on. I filed my report because, if someone like me with a platform and resources felt that helpless, what happens to those who don't? What happens to residents who can't run to the press or speak in council chambers? Her voice steadies, firm again. I'm not here out of spite. I'm here because no one in this city should feel hunted by the person sworn to protect them. The silence afterward is thick. Even Maddox's arrogance doesn't fill it. Chief Robert Maddox lets out a sharp breath through his nose, the kind that tries to disguise irritation as composure. His attorney, Daniel Mercer, instinctively reaches for his arm as if to signal restraint, but Maddox brushes him off with a slight flick of the wrist. Your Honor, Maddox begins, his voice threading dangerously between control and contempt. What you just heard was a dramatic reinterpretation of a simple conversation taken wildly out of context. A couple of people in the gallery shift uncomfortably. Maddox presses on. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't block anyone. I certainly didn't hunt a city official. His tone sharpens on the last word as if mocking Elena's testimony. I offered professional advice, nothing more. If Councilwoman Morales chose to twist that into fear, that is unfortunate, but not criminal. Judge Caprio watches him without blinking. Maddox continues, heat rising behind every syllable. This entire narrative is built on exaggeration. I've served this city for nearly 3 decades. I don't need to intimidate anyone to make a point. Mercer subtly tugs his sleeve again. Maddox ignores him. And quite frankly, he adds, jaw tightening, I'm disappointed this courtroom is entertaining such theatrics. The temperature in the room rises. Because everyone recognizes the shift. The mask of professionalism is cracking. A heavy stillness settles over the room, thicker than the stale courtroom air. No one moves. No one even dares clear their throat. It's the kind of silence that doesn't simply fall, It spreads, tightening around every person like an invisible restraint. Lauren Kim lowers her pen, eyes narrowing just slightly as she studies Maddox's shifting demeanor. The clerk's fingers hover above the keyboard, frozen midair. Even the bailiff, Sergeant Hill, shifts his stance, subtly bracing as if sensing the direction the storm is turning. Judge Caprio remains still, hands folded neatly, gaze locked on the chief with unnerving calm. But Maddox? Maddox radiates a different energy now, something rawer, hotter, more volatile. His breath comes sharper. His jaw pulses. His knuckles whiten as he grips the edge of the defendant's table. It's clear to everyone watching. The chief isn't calming down. He's heating up. Chief Robert Maddox straightens, shoulders rigid, eyes burning with a pride that refuses to shrink. His attorney, Daniel Mercer, senses the shift instantly, the subtle tightening of Maddox's jaw, the way his chest rises sharply with each breath. Mercer leans in, whispering urgently, but Maddox barely hears him. He's too far inside his own indignation. "Your Honor," Maddox says, voice louder now, echoing slightly through the chamber, "I have dedicated 28 years of my life to this city. And I find it insulting, frankly absurd, that we're treating a conversation between colleagues as some sort of criminal assault." Caprio opens his mouth to respond, but Maddox barrels ahead. "This entire spectacle," he says, sweeping his arm toward the gallery, "is built on paranoia and political theater. Councilwoman Morales pushed a proposal without understanding the realities my officers face. I tried to explain the consequences. That's not intimidation. That's leadership." A few whispers rise in the crowd. Mercer tries again to grab Maddox's sleeve. Maddox pulls away. "And let's be honest," he continues, tone hardening, "the only reason we're here is because certain people in this city enjoy pretending they're being targeted when someone simply disagrees with them." Caprio's face remains unreadable. "Chief Maddox," the judge says quietly, "this is not the time for speeches." Maddox steps forward, ignoring the warning. "No, Judge, I think it is," he snaps. "Because I'm tired of watching this court bow to emotional exaggeration while ignoring the practical backbone that keeps the city alive." His voice grows sharper, more reckless. "I run a department of over 300 officers. I make decisions that protect thousands of lives. But one councilwoman with a bruised ego cries, 'Threat,' and suddenly I'm on trial?" His chest heaves. The courtroom feels smaller, tighter. Maddox is no longer defending himself. He's attacking the entire system. Judge Caprio lifts his hand slightly, the universal signal to stop, but Maddox is long past signals, past sense, past restraint. His chest rises sharply, anger boiling over the edge he's been pretending doesn't exist. "You want honesty?" Maddox growls, stepping closer to the bench. Mercer reaches for him, too late. "Here's the truth, Judge," he spits. "You sit up there pretending your robe makes you untouchable, pretending you run this city." Caprio's eyes harden, but he remains silent. Maddox leans forward, voice dropping to a venomous whisper that carries through the stunned courtroom. "In the real world? I own you." Then, with a sneer twisting across his face, he adds the word that detonates the room. "Pig." Silence crashes down like a hammer. For a heartbeat, no one moves. No one breathes. The word hangs in the air like smoke from a gunshot, thick and impossible to ignore. Then the room reacts, not loudly but violently in energy. A woman in the gallery gasps so sharply it echoes off the walls. Another person stands up instinctively, eyes wide with disbelief. Lauren Kim's jaw drops, her pen slipping from her fingers and clattering to the table. Even the usually stone-faced bailiff, Sergeant Hill, stiffens, one hand drifting toward his duty belt as if bracing for what might happen next. Daniel Mercer steps back from his own client as though Maddox has become radioactive. Judge Caprio doesn't move at all. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't blink. His silence is heavier than any shout, heavier than any gavel. It presses down on the room, suffocating the last traces of Maddox's defiance. Because everyone understands something in that moment. Whatever happens next will define Robert Maddox's fate. And it won't be gentle. Judge Frank Caprio finally moves, but only slightly. He reaches for his glasses, removes them with a slow precision that makes the entire courtroom lean forward, and sets them down on the bench as if placing the final piece of a puzzle. When he looks up, something in him has changed. The warmth that usually softens his expression is gone. What replaces it is harder, quieter, and infinitely more dangerous. It's the look of a man who has spent a lifetime defending the integrity of a system he believes in, and has just watched someone spit on it. "Chief Maddox," Caprio says, his voice low but carrying unmistakable authority, You have said many things in this courtroom today. None of them wise. Maddox opens his mouth, but Caprio raises a single finger. Just one. The chief freezes. Caprio continues, you may command officers. You may oversee budgets. You may carry medals on your chest. But in this courtroom, none of that elevates you above respect, truth, or the law. A ripple moves through the gallery. Caprio takes one step forward, closing the emotional distance between bench and defendant without leaving his seat. You believe your badge grants you ownership over the people you swore to protect. You believe authority is a weapon. And today you reveal just how deeply that belief runs. His voice sharpens. Now this court will reveal something to you. Judge Caprio leans back slightly, drawing in a steady breath as if choosing each word with surgical precision. The entire courtroom sits suspended in silence, waiting, not out of curiosity but reverence. Chief Maddox, Caprio begins, in my 30 years on this bench I've heard lies, excuses, anger, desperation. I've seen people at their lowest and at their most arrogant. But what you revealed in this courtroom today is something far more dangerous than any of that. Maddox shifts, but Caprio's gaze pins him in place. You didn't just lose your temper. You didn't just disrespect this bench. You exposed the truth you've carried for years, that you believe the power granted to you by this city is not a responsibility but ownership. Caprio shakes his head slowly, eyes never leaving the chief. You spoke as if the officers under your command exist to shield you from consequences. As if the citizens of this city live in the shadow of your authority. As if the law itself bends around your will. The judge leans forward. That is not leadership. That is corruption. That is the mindset of a man who has forgotten the meaning of public service. A quiet murmur ripples through the gallery. Caprio's voice deepens. Let me remind you what your badge stands for. It is not a crown. It is not armor. It is not a symbol meant to place you above those you serve. It is a promise to protect, to uphold, to act with integrity even when no one is watching. He gestures toward the monitor where Elena Morales still watches, eyes glistening. And while this councilwoman stood terrified in a dark garage, you wielded your authority like a blade. You weaponized fear. You used personal information about her child, as leverage to silence her. Maddox's jaw tightens but he stays silent. Caprio continues, voice rising, not loud but steeped in force. You believe you run this city. You believe your title grants you immunity. And today in front of witnesses, you declared that you own this court. That you own me. Caprio stands. The room tightens. Well, here is the reality you refuse to see, Chief Maddox. You own nothing in this courtroom. Not the officers outside. Not the people inside. And certainly not the law that governs us all. His hand rests on the bench, steady and firm. Power is not measured by how loudly you command obedience. It is measured by how faithfully you uphold justice. And today, you showed this city exactly who you are. Caprio's final words fall like the closing of a heavy door. And now this court will show you who we are. Judge Caprio settles back into his seat, but the authority radiating from him fills every inch of the courtroom. Papers rest untouched before him. He doesn't need to look at a single one. The truth has already been spoken, most of it by the defendant himself. Chief Robert Maddox, Caprio begins, voice steady as stone, based on the sworn testimony of Councilwoman Morales, the corroborating evidence reviewed by this court and, most significantly, your own words and conduct displayed here today. I find you guilty on all counts. A stunned silence crashes through the gallery. Maddox blinks as if the verdict were physically impossible. Caprio continues. For abuse of authority, intimidation of a public official and interference with an active city investigation, the court imposes the following penalties. He looks directly at Maddox, unblinking. First, you are fined $50,000. This payment will come from your personal assets, not department funds, not union accounts, not taxpayer dollars. Yours alone. Maddox's throat tightens. Second, Caprio says, effective immediately, you are suspended from your position as chief of police without pay, pending a full administrative review by the mayor's office and the city council. A wave of shock ripples across the room. Third, a protective order is granted to Councilwoman Morales. You are to have no contact with her, direct or indirect, and you are to remain no less than 500 feet from her home, workplace, and her child's school at all times. Maddox's face drains of color. And finally, Caprio adds, voice growing heavier, I am referring this case to the Rhode Island Attorney General's office for further investigation into potential patterns of misconduct, coercion, or conspiracy within your command. Your behavior today strongly suggests this incident was not an isolated event. The judge leans forward. This city deserves better. And justice will continue long after this hearing ends. The courtroom remains frozen for several long seconds after Judge Caprio delivers the final word. No one rushes to leave. No one whispers. It's as if the entire room is trying to absorb what just happened, trying to reconcile the shock of a man who believed himself untouchable being stripped of the power he once abused. Chief Maddox stands motionless, the weight of consequences finally settling across his shoulders. His medals no longer shine. His authority no longer fills the room. He looks smaller now, like a man facing the truth he spent years outrunning. On the screen, Councilwoman Elena Morales exhales in relief, shoulders sinking as the fear she carried begins to loosen its grip. Judge Caprio gathers his papers calmly, the storm settling around him. And the gallery, they rise slowly, knowing they witness something rare. A powerful man learning the one lesson he never expected. Justice never belongs to him. If you've watched this far, you know moments like this don't happen often. Courtrooms see arguments, mistakes, apologies, but rarely do they witness the collapse of unchecked power in real time. Judge Caprio didn't just deliver a verdict today, he delivered a message heard far beyond these walls. If you believe in accountability, if you believe in courage behind the bench, if you believe justice still has a heartbeat, then make sure you're part of the community keeping these stories alive. Hit subscribe to Real Judge Stories, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below telling us what stunned you most about today's case. Because as long as these stories exist, we'll be here to tell them. Unfiltered, unafraid, uncompromised.